Jonathan, it's good to see you again. It's been a few weeks, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been a little bit, Ron. It's great to always great to be in dialogue with you.
Yeah, I'm glad we're going to have this conversation today. And what I'm interested in talking with you today, since we both come from a body-centered perspective, or at least more body-centered than a lot of traditions and practitioners, is the question, why do we even care in the awakening process about the body? We have tradition after tradition from all continents that have told us for centuries that the body is to be transcended or denied or punished because enlightenment is really more something other than that. And you and I went the other way on that. And I wonder if you could talk a bit to our viewers and listeners about how you got interested or how you started to realize for yourself that the body can't be left out of the process of awakening. So would you take
Yeah,
us
that,
there?
yeah. Well, that's a great intro. So to be honest with you, in some ways I got into spirituality because I got accused of being too in my head. It wasn't really good for my dating life at all, and I was really not good for my career either because I was caught up in sabotage programs of trying to do everything instead of getting focused. And I started in a practice that was Dzogchen Ma Mudra that was more of a mental practice. And honestly, that was the right practice for me at first, but that helped me get into the body. I read a book like called The Body Knows the Score that
Mhm.
talks about traumas and we hold things in our body. And that was highly influential. But all my major defense patterns were in my head. So I had to weaken with them and work with them for probably about 5 years before I really started to go into my body. And then the body became really the primary practice of really getting into the body through somatic therapy. And psychedelics actually helped out because they penetrated the defense patterns and then allowed me to drop into the body and feel things that weren't there. And so I'm a different person now. I'm calmer. I can like hold stillness now. I can be with people and getting into my body at deeper and deeper levels. The last thing I want to finish with before I toss it back to you is the realization that it's not going from the head to the body as like a you just do that. It's more like a slow progression of dropping in, feeling what's in, processing what's in there, at least from my experience, and an iteration. Like I'm slowly kind of moving deeper and deeper into my body. What's your experience of it? And how did you get into it?
Well, I grew up as a skinny little kid, a little young for my grades always, and so the body was never really my friend. It was always I kind of thought, well, I'm gonna thrive in spite of this body, this too small, too young body, and so I leaned on my intellect all throughout my childhood and into even when I got to school. I think my first taste of the embodied awakening path was kind of the confluence of both Zen and plant medicine. I had
Mm.
my first psilocybin experiences when I was about 20. So that'd be precisely a million years ago. And that was just about the time I encountered Zen, which to my eye seemed very embodied. They didn't have, Zen seemed light on doctrine and heavy on practice. And
Mm.
that confluence there at least piqued my interest. Now, I that period of time of plant medicine and Zen uh, confluence was relatively short. And then I had a period where I did a lot of reading about Zen and less practice and not any medicine for quite a
Mm.
long time. And then I encountered a large group awareness process that was called LifeSpring. It's no longer in business, but it kind of came up side by side with Est. Est became Landmark and Forum. LifeSpring has splintered, and there are still folks out there doing that training, but it's no longer called that. And what I experienced there was a kind of learning, deep learning, that was all about experience. And I had a lot of schooling and not much experiential learning in a formal setting, and that got my interest. And then that led me to a retreat center where it was very, very somatic, and then kind of took off from there. And like you, I I got a lot of feedback that I was too much in my head, and and I didn't know what that meant, didn't know how to do anything about it. But the somatic path really started to deepen my appreciation of the involvement of the body. What's happened with you lately? What have you learned lately in this path of yours that has deepened your relationship with the somatic world?
I'm getting to share a recent. I did a boga about a year ago. It's a very, for those who don't know what it is, it's a very intense trip. It's like 2 days. It's an African thing, and it opens up a lot of channels. And that was my focus, was embodiment. And it took me to like a memory of being like a two, and I was like with my mom. And I was about to shoot across the street, and a car was coming, and my mom grabbed my hand and she was like, no, 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 bad Jonathan, like never. And she like pointed to her head, always look, always think. And like
Mm.
and like I don't know, I think my double checker went into like a quadruple checker. It was like check, 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 safety, safety, safety. And it was like a really sharp memory that in my default network, that go to the head, think about things about 100 times before you do anything, and don't really trust the body at all. And during that ceremony, I changed. It gave permission. That medicine is really powerful. It's almost, it reprograms your cells over time. And I started this repatterning. I started imagining water coming, like feeling emotions, and I was like default network down, water, water, water. And I started just yelling like down, down, into the body, into the body, into the body, like a repetition, like a reprogramming of like let's that program serve for a while. But now that I'm older and I know it's safety, and also my sense of self is bigger than Jonathan because of the Ma Mudra Dzogchen practice. I'm kind of have a sense of self about being the field of awareness, which I know is also a practice in Zen, about being this outer body, this etheric body. And so something you can trust, that body will take care of you and you can sense it. It's ironically, if you're more present and not all up in your head thinking, worrying, you'll sense and feel things a lot more. And that's actually way more safe. It's a higher safety program. And so it's been a year since then. And since then, I've been continuing to do different kind of somatic purges, um, both physical and like emotional releases have just continued and deepened and accelerated. And now I feel, before I was like all in my head thinking, but now I can walk around and I can feel my feet and my legs like without doing any practices, which is like a revelation. And so I can see that process of dropping fully into my body deepening. And yeah, I mean, I'm getting like that's kind of become a specialty of mine now. Is like my hero's journey is like the thing you solve for yourself, you help other people. So now the field's like, yeah, Jonathan, you can tell a coherent story because you actually have done it. You've walked the territory to help, intellectual people, particularly men, move from their head into being whole again. And I think it's really important because when you're whole, you have more information because you're not all in your worry mind, and you can be more than just you can be the field, you can be the people you're with, and you can take in their information into your heart and you can make better choices. And it's been really good for my entire life. I feel a more natural sense of joy than I did before, where before it was a lot of worry, and then how can I solve these? It's almost like worry, 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 and how can I solve these was like my predominant subtle way of being. And now it's more like, oh, it's just fun to be alive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the broader context of not just the human body, but the field in which we operate. I would say that even though everything I've described so far led me down a path that had me embrace learning through the body, or growing through the body, or becoming increasingly aware of the body, it wasn't until I started training in Tantra that I really got a grounding in the somatic world. And it's not so much about techniques. I learned all that later at the Shalom Mountain Retreat Center in the Catskills of New York. And I also learned a ton about that, of course, at the Institute of Core Energetics. But what Tantra provides is a complete and radical inclusion of the whole game. There's no mind-body split because there's no boundary, as Ken Wilber wrote in one of his earliest books. It's called No Boundary. I think it may have been his second or third book. No boundary is, and there's no boundary anywhere in the cosmos. There is no boundary. And when you start to ground your own experience in that broader notion of there is no edge, there's not only no separation between my inside and my outside, there's no separation between me and you that has any reality whatsoever. At the physical level, at the emotional level, at the uh, psychic level, and at the spiritual level, we are one. And then, of course, you take that to the extreme, and then you get to non-dual realization. And non-dual means non-dual. There is no split, mind, body, or otherwise, in a non-dual awakening. We are one. The whole thing is one. And so with that grounding in the broader cosmology, then the more intimate experience of awakening in my body and through my body has a place to land in the cosmology. I think there's a quote somewhere in the Old Testament. I forget which book. I'm not an Old Testament scholar. In which someone says, I think it's Jeremiah, through my body I envision thee, O Lord. So our body is the way that we, as infinite, boundless consciousness, timeless consciousness, get to look at ourselves. It's almost a Carl Sagan quote. We are a way that he said, we are how the universe gets to know itself. Well, if you just take out his materialistic word, universe, and just say, I am, our finite consciousness is the way that I am, the one, gets to see itself and gets to know itself. Yeah, and so that gives my physical practice, my spiritual practice, which is physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual, a cosmological place to land.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I wanted to add in is this grounding this word non-dual, at least for how I grounded it within me, its own my experience. I see life as like it's all one thing, but then the one thing breaks itself into subtle boundaries that are permeable, at least in my construction of ultimate reality. And there's things called energetics, like the parts have relationship. Every time I say a word, it's coming out energetically and going into your field and the audience field, and it's interacting with their witness and their being, and it's having an impact. And so it's not that far-fetched. It's just like and all objects kind of have energies. Just if you give something meaning, like a tree has tree energy or whatever you associate with it, it's kind of like bouncing back in our field as a representation. So it's actually pretty practical and grounded when you kind of think about it like that. And Tantra's had a big effect on me. But before I even talk about my own Tantra, because Tantra has a lot of different meanings. There's like a whole sexual Tantra. What do you mean by Tantra? Because I think that might help the viewers ground, or even me, to help understand like exactly what you're talking about.
Well, I'm glad you raised that, because in our Western culture, very often we think of what I and the folks I practice with call California Tantra. That is, better sex through careful breathing or something, distinctly sexual. I've had a lot of Tantra training, and not one of those formal trainings has had sexuality at all, which is, I got nothing against sexually oriented Tantra trainings. Mm-hmm. It just was never part of my training. Tantra, in my lineage, comes from the Himalayas, from the Kashmir Shaivist region. And Kashmir Shaivist, the Kashmir region, and Kashmir Shaivism is a particular flavor of tantric study and practice that is in that, derived from that part of the world. A lot of the sources I've read are from a Kashmir Shaivist saint named Kshema. It was about 1,000 years ago. There's a relatively recent translation by Christopher Wallace of the Recognition Sutra. and you get a sense. And I don't think sex is mentioned once in this entire amazing life transforming sutra, because the Tantra is, every time you start to define something like Tantra, you get out on a limb and you're almost making a mistake the moment you open your mouth. So I'll ask our viewers forgiveness for what is a completely incorrect definition of Tantra, but I'll say it just to get the conversation moving. It is a worldview that is radically inclusive, so inclusive that it becomes identity. I am. And the I am for the Kashmir Shaivists is Shiva. There's something from either Tantra Illuminated or the Recognition Sutra, both by Wallace, where he says, what Shiva wants, Shiva gets, and you are Shiva. So there's this radical inclusivity. And when you get to radical inclusivity, saying yes to everything, yes to everything, the whole thing, the good, the bad, and the ugly, that's Tantra. And whether Tantra is expressed through the Kashmir Shaivist lens, or as Mark Goffney describes Kabbalah, he speaks of that lineage as Jewish Tantra. So because of his lineage goes through folks like the Baal Shem Tov and the Ishbitzer and Rabbi Cook. These are all Kabbalists, but from one perspective, they're all also tantric teachers. How's that resonate with your notion?
A lot. I kind of want to yes and it. Beautiful explanation. I've read Christopher Wallace's those books you mentioned. I'm a big fan of his, and Kashmir Saiism is kind of like at least in his book said it was a sister technology of my main Eastern technology, which is Vajrayana Buddhism. I think it's considered a third. Kashmir Saiism is considered a third turning practice, and so is Dzogchen Mahamudra. So I kind of wanted to ground some things in my interpretation. I want to talk about Shiva first for those people. So in that tradition, there's Shiva, Vishnu, Brahman, and this is how I construct those three and why Shiva is boss and why he's I am. So I see Shiva represents he's I am. He's the one who reacts. And Vishnu is like the field at which the dance at which everything plays on, and Brahman is like material reality or even just subtle reality. It's anything that you can name. So Shiva sees Brahman in Vishnu, and as he sees it, he reacts, and so he is you. We're all Shiva. We're all I am. That's how I construct it.
Cool.
And I've always seen like Tantra as life, and yes. I'm also deeply influenced by Kabbalah through my teacher, Donnie Epstein, who taught me epi-energetics. He's a Kabbalist. And I'm definitely into blending East and West through. Those are my two main teachers, is like Daniel Brown from Vajrayana Buddhism and Donnie Epstein, who's teaching the Kabbalah. And so Tantra for me is a way of life. It is everything. I think yes and is saying everything. It's like, yes, saying yes to things is just seeing as it is and not pushing it away. Like in Vajrayana Buddhism, you don't want to, when you push things away or you try to make more of something, then you're not being with the present as it is and seeing the presence of it. And so you want to be with it as it is. And I want to bring in a more advanced Tantra as it ascends, and see how this kind of lands this thing. But bring in some Donnie language here about bringing in some new energies. So in Vajrayana Buddhism, they call it emptiness, like where you see everything. Empty just means open, like, okay, that's how I saw it before, but now fresh eyes, like I'm seeing it with new eyes. And Donnie calls it like unbound energy, free energy, like bound energy is like how you saw it in the past from your mental model. But if you have a practice of seeing it from a higher energetic, then you allow new things to happen. And this really unleashes a lot more mystical energy, a lot more uncertainty, but in a safe way. My practice is both for me and my clients is life as Tantra. And I wanted to bring in one of my tantric practices that I got from Vajrayana Buddhism. It's a bit esoteric. It's called deity yoga, and there are different levels you can play at deity yoga. But deity yoga is about like putting on a mask of an archetype. It doesn't have to be a deity, but it's traditionally deities. It's an archetype, and you allow it. Now the thing is, you don't. If you want to play it at the most advanced levels, you want to shift your identity to just being now. Like, you know that your mind likes to make up stories about life, and you know the truth is I'm just now. I'm just, whatever, how I describe it, energy, information, or Jonathan talking to Ronen. I'm not any of the deities I'm putting on. So you kind of put the mask on, because when you do that, you can put it on tighter. Because if you put it on really tight and you don't have that practice, you might think you're the deity or something like that, which is ridiculous. I'm just Jonathan. And so when I was doing ayahuasca, it suggested, why don't you play with Ganesha? And it came up to me in a mystical way. But I'll just stick with it. And Ganesha helped me remove obstacles in the body, actually. And later, after working with 5-MeO-DMT, again, it came in a strange mystical way. It said, I want you to work with Yeshua. I'm like, why Yeshua? I'm like a Jewish guy with a Tibetan Buddhist practice. I don't know what's in the Bible. I got nothing against it. I'm like 1/8 Christian or whatever. But I said, no, Yeshua is good for you. And it said, I want you to do it in a particular way. I don't want you to read the Bible, but I want you to pretend maybe you actually were him in a past life. And I really actually ended up focusing on torture. And I want to bring this up because it gets back into the body. Obviously he was tortured at the end of his life, and it's something, by me pretending I was him and pretending that I was tortured in a past life, that actually eventually led me to my own torture, super trauma that I completely suppressed, where I was sexually assaulted at a young age. And it's something said, your mind doesn't know the difference. It's you're pretending. It's hey, if you can handle hanging out for 5 hours and a crucifixion, maybe you could address your slightly less trauma. And that helped me get even more into the body by feeling into it, and we're re-remembering those memories and then absorbing. Because when that happened, I checked out. I went into my leaving pattern and I blocked most of it out, and then I had to digest it, and just feeling those traumas helped me put it into the body. But just to bring it back to Tantra, this is Tantra's life. Those are tantric, high level kind of tantric experiences that kind of can fast path you to getting into just being your real self, which is just being the natural state, like they would say in Vajrayana Buddhism, is just to be relaxed in your body, get all your feeling senses, and just recognize that life itself is a gift. And so I think it's important that people understand that Tantra is an option, and also it takes skill to do it in a deep way. I know I offer guidance, and it sounds like probably you do too. But it's good for people who want to do that practice to know what they're doing, because I wouldn't want to walk around and be like, hey Ronen, I'm Jesus. So that's ridiculous. You know what I mean? You'd make an ass of yourself. You know what I mean? So you want to do it in a skillful way so that you can take these things off too. They serve a purpose. I also I have Snoopy tattooed on my arm here as a tattoo since I got there. And I use Snoopy, so you don't have to just use a deity. I'm not Snoopy either. Obviously, I'm Jonathan, but Snoopy makes me think of being light and playful, and where Jesus was more helping me deal with torture, and Ganesh is more about problem solving. So different archetypes and different tantric experiences can expand your sense of self, your skills, your lines and levels, your different capacities. So I just want to give some people some examples of Tantra.
I've got a little stuffed Spider-Man over there.
Oh, nice.
He's my childhood miniature deity. I love what you said about Tantra is life. I think that it's important for those who don't know what we're talking about, or hearing about this for the first time, to understand that, yeah, there are things called practices, but it's not about that. It's about, well, Mark Goffney calls it eroticizing your life. And he's not talking about sexualizing your life. Eroticizing your life. Eros being the energy that birthed the cosmos and continues to birth all that is. It's the energy behind all of that. And so living a life that acknowledges and aligns with the natural flow of that life force, as the folks in core energetics and bioenergetics call it, life force, um, or Shakti, or it has all sorts of names and all sorts of traditions. To live in alignment with that and aware of it is to live Tantra. So and that can be as simple. I can be consciously living Tantra with my head on a pillow in the last 3 minutes of being awake in a day, and just fully inhabiting that moment with the entirety of my presence, whether that or whether I'm with you now, just to be completely present to what is, and who I, and what is I am.
Exactly.
And of
I
course,
think.
none of this can be talked about. So everything you and I have just said is a lie, because, but we have to talk about it, if in order to call people's attention to the indescribable.
Well, I think one of the things that I really want to go deep on, so it's really important, and it relates to the the body, and the bio. I guess maybe I'm kind of slipping in there too, but Eros, desire body, because then there's a lot of Eastern traditions that says desire is bad. We should not
Right.
be, no, don't listen to your desire. And I'm gonna say the word bullshit.
Right.
uh,
Excellent.
no, 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 no. You don't want to be attached to how your desire body gets unfolds, because that's going to lead to a lot of suffering, because you don't know how the field's going to organize your desires. But as Donnie Epstein talks about, is you want to get your energy up, and there's a lot of desire. When I'm working with the client, that's one of the first things I want to get in tune with, like, what do you desire? Because if I'm, because I only want to work with people who want to have deep, long lasting change. So I want to attach it to their desires, because I know that they're more likely going to follow through with integration if it's attached to their desire body.
Right.
So that's really important. But also, non-attachment is an important lesson, which is like, we don't know how it's going to unfold, and it's probably almost never. I mean, sometimes the more in my body I do get premonitions, and things do happen, sort of like I did, but they're more like guides. Your soul talks to you through process. It's like, go do this. So sometimes my my process things get me moving in a direction. Sometimes they have it sort of like I said, sometimes not at all, but it got me moving in a direction. That's why it's good to work with people who've gone through this process, because it can be really confusing when you start to connect to transpersonal voices, and you take them too literally, and you don't understand they're a process agent working on your behalf. Especially if you don't have really good maps of how unfolding works. I mean, a lot of people getting this work don't know about cleaning up work or waking up, these Ken Wilber terms, different dimensions of reality that make you more whole. So it can be a very confusing landscape. And I see a world emerging when robots and AI and quantum start to get bigger and bigger, or self-actualization is going to be way more, there's going to be more opportunities for people to do that and to live out their desired bodies, because, we can offload some of the things we don't want to do to AI infused robots, and so it's a great life that's coming up. But it could also go really sideways if people don't have good maps and good teachers who are grounded on how this actually works. And so the last thing I want to close with, and this little section is about something that Donnie Epstein teaches around Tantra, because he has a new codex called Epienergetics. It's energy and information to produce the extraordinary. And what he's done is he's defined these different intelligences in seasons into like quintessence. He's like Ken Wilber of the subtle energetics. He's really got these clever maps. And when you learn these definitions, you realize that they're operating all the time. And now once you can name them, you can start to work with them instead of them kind of imposing on you. And you can talk to the field about your desire if you know the language, and it expedites the process, because clarity, I say this one times in a row, clarity is really important. Clarity meaning clear with your own intentions, like how do you know if you're in a shadow part or if you're really in your desire body? And then how do you and then patterns, like life actually has patterns. There actually are patterns of transformation. Metaphysics is a thing, organizational development's a thing about the process. And so the more we're clear on patterns and desires and maps of the mind. The psyche is super complicated. So I think it's really important now to get this information out there, so that people can grow and evolve and have their real desire bodies manifest into something epic in the real world. I know that's possible. I know that's the world that's coming. So I'm completely inspired. I'm dedicating my entire life to helping that process.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm inspired by your inspiration, Jonathan. Um, I, you covered a lot of ground there, and I'll just pick a
Yeah.
couple of them. First of all, uh, you have been blessed by teachers, and I've been blessed by teachers. So your point earlier about um, about the blessings of teachers in our lives. I spent a couple of nights at the Chicago Zen Temple near Wrigley Field on a couple of different occasions, and the guy who was then the monk running it, Samu Sunim, when I was sitting with him after a meditation, informal teacher-student pose, but I wasn't his student. He said, do you have a teacher? He asked, and I said, no. He said, well, this is not a self-serve gas station. We all need teachers. And so I've been blessed by some great ones. And one of my great teachers was a man named Jerry Judd, who founded the Shalom Mountain Retreat Center in New York and died just 6.5 years ago. Very dear friend toward the end of his life. And when he would enter a room in some sort of ceremonial status, which happened with some regularity because he was kind of a big deal in that little community, he would say, "My name is Gerald J. Judd." I mean, you have to picture this guy, white hair, white beard, 100 years old. Literally, he died a couple of months shy of 100 years old. And he would say, "My name is Gerald J. Judd, and I am a left-handed tantrika. And Jesus Christ is my guru, and I surrender my preferences to God." And well, at first, when I heard him say that early in our friendship, I thought, that's horseshit, Jerry. You have preferences. But he didn't say he didn't have preferences. I'm circling back to your comment about desire. He didn't say he didn't have preferences. He said he surrenders them to God like this. And this is where it got tantric. Years later, I was at his home in Pennsylvania for a weekend visit, as I often had with him, and he said, "I don't know if you noticed, but I used to say I yield." He said, "I used to say I surrender my preferences to God, but I'm now saying I yield my preferences." And I said, "I had noticed that you're saying yield instead of surrender. Why is that?" And here's what he told me, and this is where it gets tantric and erotic. He said, all of my life, and by that point, I think that that was the last time I saw him. He was 99 and a half. It was in November of 18. He said, "I've spent my entire life trying to cultivate a lover relationship with my God." I remember that line for the rest of my life. Trying to cultivate cultivating a lover relationship with my God. And he said, surrender just didn't fit in that. He said, when General Lee put his sword down in front of General Grant at Appomattox, I'm imagining he was not in a loverly mode at that moment. He was not feeling an erotic or loving lover relationship with General Grant. So surrender has this, at least for Jerry it did, has this texture that he didn't like in the way that he liked yield. He went on to explain, yield is what I do when Georgianne, his wife, when Georgianne and I are making love and she shifts my hip to the right or my elbow to the left. I yield to her gentle touch. And so I yield my preferences to God. And I love the energy of that way of describing a relationship with desires, preferences, aversions. Buddhism in some translations, cautions against not only desire but aversion, and that's just two sides of the same coin. I desire you to get away from me, right? Is aversion. I desire not to have this pain or this backache or all of that, but to just notice the desire and then hold it like a feather and yield to it. Say, all right, I have this desire and I don't get it met right now. All right, this is what is. And that's Tantra. That's just like, I can feel the desire. I can even play with the feeling of the desire and also be in the full presence of not being able to get what I want in this second. And the experience, what's the texture? To me, it almost feels like a texture of the fabric of being, that we can kind of have this experience that we are having now. And then just play with the texture of it, whether it's pain or grief or ecstasy or ordinary. Cooking your eggs in the morning, or, sitting down to read the paper in the morning. It could be as ordinary as dirt, and to have the same kind of full presence to this. That, to me, is Tantra. This.
Yeah, beautifully said. I'll just say one thing about that, just slightly different language about yield, but I felt like as my different egoic structures or different senses of self, ego just meaning parts of self, were bumping up with the transpersonal, it felt like a little bit of a negotiation maybe, and yielding eventually, because I think the higher self has more free energy. And but I think it's good for people who know or entering this who are afraid they're gonna like do some medicine or meditate and a whole energy is just gonna usurp their entire personality and you're gonna come out like alien or something. That's like, it's not like that at all. It's, I think, as you're saying, it's a yielding, it's a process. And I think what you said beautifully about loving kind of what is a frame is also falling in love with the tantric process of life, or the process of life, is, especially if you have big desires, it's going to take time and you're going to need training. Some people wants to have a big impact, or have, great jobs or partners, that meet you. It's like, okay, you might need to grow in certain dimensions in order to meet that dream. And your higher self knows your potential better than your lower self. And so I think if people realize it's a process, and the more you make that process fun, and I have a vision of working with other practitioners about gamifying it, like, okay, because we need to, I think measurement's important. There's a lot of people who have the orange, meme of like, I want to be validated. And well, validation in a tantric growth process is, looks a little bit different than traditional, boom, I got the high score on the video game thing. It's more like, okay, you develop this skill a little bit. Sometimes it's actually, this is one of the trickier parts, because a lot of people want to, avert, push, oh, I don't want to feel that feeling anymore. I'm like, well, if you don't want to feel that dark feeling anymore, you actually have to make it bigger and bigger. And then eventually, because you have to absorb it, it's a teacher. And every time you absorb it or feel it more, then you get the lessons. And then also, if it does come up, you have such a close relationship, you don't fear it anymore. And so it's more like that. So more getting realistic, grounded, what does tantric growth look like, I think is important as we're moving into this new stage of trying to get access to more people.
Yeah, I echo everything that you say. I want to hone in on one piece of it, and that is to say that this, much of what we're talking about has historically been in the category of an esoteric worldview or an esoteric teaching. And so, let's look at that word. Esoteric is the hidden teaching, and the exoteric is the more overt teaching. And the hidden teaching is hidden for a reason, and that is, has been, there's some kind of nefarious notions about that, why it's hidden, and that the dark side of it is it's hidden to control. and that's a power game by those who are in possession of wisdom sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also hidden because sometimes there are the full realization of this, this probably ought to come with a warning label and at least a well-constructed ego. There are many who walk among us who, for an infinite number of reasons, each a unique path, their particular tear with reality that is inevitable for all of us is such that exposure to the full realization, the all at once, would actually be destructive. Dr. Willoughby Britton, a professor at Brown University, has spent a good deal of the time that I've known her and before, which goes back 15 years, I think, is when we first met, of studying. And it's funny, you said medicine and meditation, studying the dark night of the soul for medicine and meditation. And she has a whole nonprofit organization built around this, does an incredible amount of teaching and research in this. And the dark night of the soul is not just a bad day or a bad month. I mean, it is a psycho-spiritual phenomenon that can happen upon a lot of folks. So these paths are not without some risks of a stubbed toe or even a broken foot, if to expand on the seriousness of the metaphor. So I will say that these esoteric teachings are more exoteric now. They're more available through books and social media and especially YouTube trainings. You can go get this esoteric training from Rupert Spira online tonight. Just pull up a Rupert Spira Vajrayana video and you're in this realization. So our species has decided to take the lid off the esoteric and say, let's see what you do with it. And let's see what we do with it. And it just like any medicine, it's good to go in with eyes open, that it can be a wild ride. A week-long meditation at a Zen monastery can be a wild ride without any medicine. And you can come out shaken for a while, like a post-5-MeO DMT experience. That Monday and the Tuesday after that weekend, it could have been 5-MeO and it could have been Zazen for a week. So,
well, I think what you're pointing to is really important about having good maps and good teachers, and how important it is. And Rupert Sparrow is an excellent teacher. So I think he's Advaita Vedanta, but anyways, that's the waking up line. I wanted to premise this that we that I, at least in my path, I feel grateful because I first got into organizational development, which is the process of transformation. So I had some understanding of what transformation was. And then before I started meditating or doing plant medicine with any kind of depth and seriousness, I got really into Ken Wilber, like deeply, deeply into Ken Wilber, obsessed over it. And that guy has amazing maps. I think his maps are, I feel like if his integral theory is like if we were creating a puzzle of like life, he's really had the outside, like his genius is like the structures, the main structures of which everything holds. And I feel like one of my gifts and other people's to build on that. So I don't need to correct Ken's stuff's as beautiful as it is, but adding to it and like the process elements to it, like what are the actual steps to move levels? What does it mean to go deeper in the waking up? Waking up is more like a meditative state, realizing that for those who don't know, is that you're waking up to your deeper sense of self, that you can connect to your transpersonal self, and that you have an identity as being this kind of field of awareness, then consciousness, and not just your body and your stories and cleaning up is this developmental line around unprocessed unprocessed experience, often trauma, but anything that's like looping, your mind's looping on things. If your mind's looping on things, then you don't have energy to be present. So it's actually pretty rational about why it makes you a better person. Well, if you integrate that, then you have more energy to be out here with people. And so great maps are really important. Um, and I was wondering if you'd be open, and we discussed this a little bit before the call, of like doing a short, like somatic experience. Maybe we could trade. I could do a quick one for you, one for me.
Sure.
I'd love to bring in another one of my teachers. I studied with Andy Hahn. He's got something called life-centered therapy. It's a really short practice. Yeah, would you want to receive or give, or are you
Well, why don't I give and then you
Okay.
give?
Okay. All right, sure.
Because one popped to mind. I have a
Go for it.
very close friend, Sequoia Sun, who is the captain of the good ship Tandemir. So if anyone has watching this has seen the movie Trading Places, it's that boat that Dan Aykroyd and Jamie Lee Curtis are on in the last scene as they're calling out to Eddie Murphy on the beach. So that boat, this friend of mine is the captain and owner of that boat. And my partner and I were recently visiting him on his boat off of St. John. And we did some process work on the beach that's real simple to teach. And I won't be able to do the whole thing here, but you can get a sense of I like whole body processes. Like, sometimes you want to work a particular area, but this is a whole body process of breath and movement and a little bit of some of that crazy psychology around blinking eyes. And so let me see, I'll tip this up. And so you kind of bend your knees, and then you get into this rhythm, bouncing up and down, and then going side to side, wiggling your fingers, and then you just blink your eyes really fast, and then you do some incredibly heavy breathing, like that. And we did that for so long, and then at the end, we inhale. Oh, and then he goes, all right, now. And because he had trained us ahead of time what to do, he said, now, and take one deep breath in, and then run in place, holding the breath as long as you can. So you can imagine 5 of us on this Virgin Islands beach, running in place until we couldn't breathe couldn't hold our breath anymore, and then we all just collapsed on the ground and huffed and puffed until we regained our senses. But we did that a couple of times, a couple of cycles of that. And it was a whole bunch of psychological structures just fall away with that breath and that movement and the eye movement, the rapid eye movement like this. It all conspires to have all of these structures that are in the way of my full presence with what is. They just kind of fall away or dissolved, got transparent. You were talking about transparent or translucent energies. They just kind of dissolve. And so there's a greater access to what actually is as a result of just freeing up that energy. And you talked about releasing that energy so we can be more available to what's happening in the moment. And this is a process I use with my clients sometimes in one shape or another. We kind of improvise as we go.
Sounds like you're getting them out of their defense patterns and into their body where they can really access things that they don't normally access.
Absolutely. And that's a great word for it, defense patterns. These are defense patterns against a reality when we formed them that was just too much for us to handle, usually in our youth. Most of life is too much to handle. So all of us come with our own unique packages of defense patterns. And these somatic processes that I work with my clients with are all means of loosening these defense patterns, making them even apparent, because we think it's what is, when what it is the headset we've got on. What is when we take the headset off. And so these defense patterns are part of the headset. And somatic work for me and for the folks I work with in my practice is an energetic removal, at least for a little while, of some aspects of the headset, and therefore allowing us greater access to what is and to our lives. And there's a greater vitality in what is when I have that kind of access.
Yeah, when you take off the headset, there's opportunities to look at what's in the subconscious and reprogram it even. And sometimes that just means being with something that's suppressed, but sometimes you could notice that you've got a story about life that's connected to things that's holding a lot in place. And when you change those narratives and you start putting a new program in there, your reality changes after that. So
Yeah,
it's
beautiful.
really important practice. Yeah.
Yeah. So how about you? What did you want to show?
Oh, okay. I was gonna, well, I don't know if you're open to apply
Sure.
something to you. Would you be open
Sure.
to,
Oh, okay.
okay. Yeah, short. I got, so what I would do is, I'm showing a synthesis of how I work rapid by combining different techniques. So, what we would do is first, I would, have you say a couple things to give permission in your field to have a quick shift on something that's important to you.
Bring it on. Let's shift something.
Okay. uh, I'm getting. Can you say the phrase? I give myself permission to have a life-altering experience right now.
I give myself permission to have be fully present to whatever arises, and I welcome life altering.
Okay. um, would you welcome in the energetics of like discovering something new and then awakening to a new perspective on something?
Absolutely.
All right. If you had to pick something in your life that's actually real and meaningful, where you're looking for a quick shift, what would it be?
Oh, I'm administrative friction.
Okay.
I, I,
What does that mean?
uh, the stuff of maintaining a life, the
Mm,
personal life, the consulting practice, the counseling practice, the maintaining the relationships with family members. I love the meat of it.
mhm,
And then there's all of this stuff that keeps me from the meat of it. It's
mhm.
like I got to, do this administrative thing. And so it feels like friction to me, and I want to be streamlined. So
Okay. All right.
I want to be aerodynamic.
All right. So we're gonna do a quick body scan. So I want
All
you to
right.
close your eyes, and I want you to, if this were a longer session, I'd do this a lot slower. But because we're doing a video here, I want you to do some body sweeps, starting at the top of your head and scroll down. And I want you to kind of drop through the body, through the head, your ears, your whole body, your jaw, and into your neck. And what I want you to do is don't say it out loud, but notice if there's any kind of spots where you feel like there's a lot of tension or some sort of tingling or something that's unorthodox. So I'm sure you've kind of done stuff like this before. So why don't you drop into the body, shoulders, the arms, chest, um, the abdomen, back. You're going down into the waist, your butt, your hips, your groin, pelvic floor, your thighs, hamstrings, knee, shins, uh, calves, feet, toes. And I'm going to throw some energy of discover. This area that stands out most right now?
Right here.
Okay. So something like almost your third eye, almost,
Yeah,
like
well,
between the
right
eyebrows.
across like a horizontal line through the third eye.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And actually, third eye is more accurate than my gesture because because I can feel it kind of in the skull, so it's right in. It feels like it's right in that energy center.
Okay, close your eyes. I want you to just focus on there. Um, I'm getting just intuitively, maybe there's an old story there present that wants to be released right now. Um, is there any? I'm gonna throw a random age out there. I don't know if this is actually this age. Was there any story of overwhelm from when you were little, age 4-ish, that's coming to you right now? Is there anything coming up to you about stories around? I'm getting the word overwhelm.
Yeah, a little later, not quite four. Four, I was still protected in the bosom of my loving family. For me, it was the harsh entry into school,
Okay.
and I skipped second grade, and so by third grade, I was a year and a half, year and three quarters younger
Mm-hmm.
than my classmates, most of my
Mm-hmm.
classmates. And so I was, seven in third grade, and just going, whoa, whoa. So for me, the year is seven, and
Mm-hmm.
I can kind of get a feel of that school and of that energy of,
Perfect. What was
oof.
the story that little 7-year-old Ronan in relationship to the being in third grade that he was coming up, if anything comes to you?
Oh, the story is I'm too little for this.
Mm.
I'm too little for this. These people are bigger than me, and they're not all that nice. And I'm kind of standing out here, and um, little kids don't like to stand out necessarily in that way. I was kind of this weird young kid uh, that was not in last year's class to those folks. I felt very much like an outsider.
Okay, so let's just notice that you kind of have this story in here that you just kind of mentioned, and it's inside your head, located. I want you to open your eyes wide open, and what if you put your sense of self outside of yourself, and now you're the entire field. I know you've got Zen
Mm,
practices and other practices
mm,
to be the field. Um, Now, when you're operating out here and you're faced with all these tasks, do you feel like this field can guide you into what's most important and give you the right energies to do what and be
oh
with
yeah.
it?
Oh,
Okay.
it's happening all the time. It's happening throughout the day. I mean, what I'm speaking to is not so much a frustration as it's a very lively energy in me right now. I'm like engaged throughout the day. With like last night, I had a big breakthrough
Hmm.
on this very endeavor yesterday, and I was so excited when I went to bed. It took me about a half an hour to get to sleep um, because it is a very powerful energy running through me, and it's an energy that is relating to. Oh, I'm getting out of the exercise. I'll just say this: it feels it's a very vibrant energy of love, and it's insistent.
Great. Right. Let's just do the thing to finish it off. So, what I'm noticing for you, if you're open to this as a practice,
Yeah.
would you be open to placing a new, very succinct program that when you start to feel this kind of feelings of overwhelm and I got to streamline and it's like, oh, it's like so many, I like the meat of it, but there's so much stuff. What if when you do that, you realize that you're like thinking about it too much and you just pop out here and you let the field guide you, and
Absolutely.
whether you
Yeah.
need a break or an energy exercise or do something different. So we're just going to do this. So I want you to put your left hand up like this.
Yeah.
This is the closing. This is the integration piece.
All
So
right.
what's your favorite word for higher self?
I am.
So okay, I am. Okay. So so we're gonna do this. I am. I like as every time Ronan starts to have these feelings he was just describing, these kind of
Mhm.
overwhelm. I don't want to do all this stuff. Oh my God, there's so many things. I just want to get to the fun part. Uh, so just remind him, be like, hey, look where you are, and tell him to pop outside of himself and be with the entire field where there's a lot more energy and information to guide him. Got
Beautiful.
that? And
I
just put
got
your
it.
other hand up. We're gonna put your other hand up.
All
Okay.
right.
So you're gonna take this information. This is the I am is gonna pop out, and then it's gonna send it's gonna take all this energy from outside yourself. There's a lot of energy here when you're the universe rather than being Ronan, who's seven, and we're gonna bring it into your bio energy. So it's
Mhm.
gonna gives you more energy to get the job done. So this is gonna represent. This is like this. The first step is recognizing your old pattern, and boom, new pattern. I'm outside of yourself, and you're gonna source energy from a bigger field. And you're just gonna go like this. You're gonna go like this. You're gonna look back and forth. It's like it's a little ritual just to tell yourself that you're gonna be like, okay, I am when I'm doing my pattern from when I was seven. I'm now going to do my adult pattern where I get outside of myself, and I let the field guide me and fuel my body. And just going to go like this,
Beautiful.
back and forth, and then start to bring your hands like closer and closer together. You're creating a contract, connecting these two stories. I'm going to count to 0 and clap your hands. 3, 2, 1.
Bingo.
And there you go. This is a prayer, and it's been answered. So,
Fantastic.
yeah. So
Oh, I
that's
love
like
that,
a short
Jonathan.
somatic. That's kind of a Jonathan synthesis of a few of my teachers kind of put together. I did
Oh, I love it. And
some,
it
yeah.
is, there's very ancient, to me, it has ancient roots in the Hindu mudra, the gesture that captures an energy and serves as a tool, as a reminder. Part of my training at Shalom Mountain, we would, it was kind of like Hogwarts, whatever book it was where they had the room of requirements where the students were off hiding and training each other because they weren't learning the arts of weaponry from the Death Eaters who had taken over Hogwarts. And so we would practice on each other. And so one of my classmates was leading me in a deep somatic process and came out of it. And she has deep Hindu training. And she said, well, can you have a gesture that will remind you of what you just realized here? And that I remember that gesture to this day. It's like, and that has a very deep meaning. I won't put it into words here. It just, I remember the energy of that process when I do this.
Nice.
And I think this will be maybe one of my new mudras here. So thank you for that teaching.
You're welcome.
And the whole process leading up to it. It's good to remember that 7-year-old. It's very good to remember. I don't want to live as him, but it's very good to remember that he suffered. I had a realization in a process earlier this year that I grew up in a family, and thank you for opening this up. This just reminded me that era. I grew up in a family so completely loving that it seemed blasphemous almost to ever again and ever afterwards in my life to ever describe my abject loneliness as a child. Surrounded by loving siblings and parents, I had a deep sense of horrible loneliness. And I really couldn't talk about it, even to myself. I couldn't admit it because it seemed ungrateful. And I raise this as an example of once we start to look at, free up these energies and then look at it through processes like the one you just introduced me to look at these structures and their roots. Oh, I can remember that beautiful 7-year-old me. That kid was great. And he's just desperately lonely and isolated among these big kids. And not just there, he was also way younger than his siblings, this little guy. Still am way younger than my siblings. And there's this kind of ground of loneliness that I couldn't confess to until I did. And then just the confession of that opens up a whole treasure trove of compassion, self-compassion and self-love that wasn't available without kind of seeing that that piece of the fabric of being in myself. Of course, that's the only fabric of being there is in myself.
Yeah, I can relate to your story of loneliness.
Yeah.
I think there definitely were periods of time where I didn't feel like I felt safe to share my full self, and I was, hidden. I actually hid parts of myself from myself. So how could I even share it with someone else if I was hiding it from myself? And
all
yeah, I think
appropriate defenses for that sense of overwhelm you were talking about. Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. This almost always happens. God, we see the world very similarly, Jonathan. This almost always happens from overwhelm. We get overwhelmed, whoever we are in that moment, whether we're 7 or 70. We are overwhelmed and don't have the psychological or spiritual resources to address the what is. And so we build these defenses and they work. They save our ass in that moment. And then we're so grateful to those defenses because they saved our ass. We hold on to them unconsciously and in the body.
Yep.
And that's exactly where we put them. We put them in the body, in the muscles. Certain muscles tighten over a lifetime because of these defenses. Our endocrine systems are impacted by these systems. We lock all of these defense mechanisms in the body, which is why you and I have experienced such the freeing up of that energy in the body as such an important part of each of our unique paths. Because I know, speaking for myself, I still am uncovering just tons of information, all of which is like, oh God, I see where that came from. That was so useful then, and I just don't need it. And there's just kind of tenderness in the exploration. Oh yeah, that little snarky remark you just made, I see how that traces back. Oh, well, we don't need that one anymore. That's kind of the feeling of it now for me. Jonathan, I think we have talked a good talk here.
Yeah, and modeled some things too. I just want to commend you also for your vulnerability and bravery in sharing about those experiences, and just let people know that is the path. You first share it to yourselves, you share it to your therapist, whoever your coach is, your friends, and then you get out, put on a video, and you're free. Hey, this is who I am. This is my story, and that's real liberation.
Oh, well, you say it, the freedom of self-revelation.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, look, this has been my path, and it's been ugly, and I not only hurt along the way, but I hurt others along the way. I mean, it has been a life so far, and I expect it to continue to be a life for quite some time. But I have 70 years of lived experience, and it's not some sort of linear thing, or it's not sacred nor profane. It's just is. It's the what is. And the embrace of, okay, that's the path, as opposed to, oh, that's the path, is for me a big part of this part of my life. It's just like, oh, this is the path.
I want to close on one thing about practicing, just really quick. There's a grounded computers. Look, we've got AI, quantum computers. It's scary. I'm just going to tell you, I know for sure the real you is smarter than all those computers. Is way more creative. They will do things that we don't want to do, and that's their purpose. But you really need to really activate your full God self or your higher self. You really, these practices that Ronen and I have been doing, they activate your higher self, your fuller self, your more creative self, your more better discernment self. And so they're important. I just want to ground it. We're not just doing this for shits and giggles. It makes you a better person. And that's why I'm so passionate about it.
Yeah. Well, for me, it makes life, living the way I live. I've come to peace with the entirety of my life. Wow. And the war is over. The war is over. And I can't begin to describe what it is to be able to say that. I mean, do I have scritches here and there? Sure, of course. How long are these guys going to take to finish that paint job? Shit like that. Or that, oh, my car maintenance was how many thousand? What? But it's, it's what it is. This is it. And why not love it? Why not love this?
Life's a mirror. The more you love it, it loves you back.
Yeah. All right, my friend. It's wonderful to speak with you again.
Always.
Let's do this again a lot sooner. Let's not let so many weeks pass.
I'm all in, brother.
Take care.
Everyone, happy Thanksgiving.
Bye-bye.
Bye.